So you started using Framer, you remixed a couple of templates, you played around with them a little bit, but now you finally want to learn how to create something from scratch. Well, in this video, we're going to be creating this animated, responsive website starting from a blank canvas. I know that this could easily be in a paid Framer course, but I'm sharing it for free. So if you want to support me, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and write a comment. I don't even want to waste any more of your time, so let me introduce myself. My name is Nandi. This is Framer University, and let's get started. So before we start, I would just want to mention that I want to make sure that this video is super easy to follow along with, so I'm gonna leave a remix link in the description for the completed project. I do still want to encourage you to, follow along with this video, build it with me, and only remix the project and take a look at how it's structured and how it's built if you get stuck somewhere. So yeah, I think we should get started. So as you can see, here we are in a Framer project. It's a completely new project. As you can see, we don't have anything here. We don't have any components, styles, or code on the assets panel on the left. So yeah, we are really starting from a blank canvas. So the first thing that I usually do is I set up my breakpoints when I jump into a new project. Breakpoints are used in Framer to optimize our website for different devices. As you already know, websites are viewed on different devices. Someone might visit our website on a phone, someone might visit our website on a desktop, and we have to make sure that it looks great both on desktop and on phone. So we can use breakpoints to achieve that. Because we can click this plus button here, we can add, for example, a tablet and the phone, and we will be able to add some overrides to our layout, change up some things about it to make sure that it looks great on tablet and on phone as well. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these, optimizations that we have to make on different breakpoints a little bit later in the video. First of all, I want to show you what I do on the primary desktop breakpoint. Because this is where we start designing the website, and then we, look at different smaller breakpoints later on to make changes on them. But when we want to, make a change, add a new element, for example, into our website, we have to do that on the primary first desktop breakpoint. But I usually make it a little bit larger. By default, it's 1200 pixels. I usually make it 1440. And this is going to be the desktop large breakpoint. And then I use this plus button here to add a new one, which is going to be the regular 1200 desktop, which is going to be desktop medium. And then the regular tablet and the phone breakpoint will be added as well. So now we have everything set up in terms of the different breakpoints. And so we can continue our little learning journey by taking a look at the different settings I set on this actual breakpoint. So you can see that when I select any frame inside the Framer, we have this right properties panel. This is where we can, change the style of the frames. For example, I can change the color of this breakpoint or this frame. I can add some code overrides, effects. I can add a layout to it, which I'm gonna, explain really, really soon. And so what I usually do here on this right properties panel is I add a layout to it. Because when I click this layout button here, now this frame is turned into a stack. So basically inside the Framer, we have a regular frame. So if I press F on my keyboard, draw a frame here, this is now a regular frame. If I click this layout button on the right panel, while this frame is selected, now as you can see, it also changed its name to stack. So now it's a stack. So what is the difference between a frame that is a stack and a regular frame? So let me just draw another, like a regular frame next to this stack that we created. So now we have a stack on the left. It's going to be a little bit like this grayish color. And then we have a regular frame on the right. So when we have a stack, the elements within, so if I press F again and place a little square within this, the elements within it will be positioned relatively. As you can see, the positioning type of this frame within is set to relative. However, on the other hand, if I place a frame within the regular frame, as you can see, it will be absolutely positioned. and I cannot even change it to relative. So we are just not allowed to do that. We have to turn this frame into a stack, and then as you can see, this will now jump to a relative position. The difference between these two positioning types is that for a relative positioning, you cannot drag the frame to any position. It will always be positioned according to the layout settings of its parent. Here we have the frame, its parent is the stack. It has the layout properties because it's turned into a stack. And we can change these to change the position of the children elements. So we can change this to start. It's gonna now start at the left side of the stack. But we can also change the direction. So if we change it to vertical, now the distribute start will mean the top of the stack. And I can press Command and D, and now as you can see, an element will be pasted under this layout frame. If I change the direction to horizontal, now these are going to be placed right next to each other. If I change the distribute to center, now they are centered. So as you can see, these are the settings that we use to control how these elements are placed within our stack. I really encourage you to go ahead and play around with this, create a stack for yourself, place some elements within it, and just see how you can position them by using these layout properties. What is also really great about stacks is that it allows us to use relative sizing options for these children elements within. So for example, if I select this frame here on the right, I can head to the width and I can set fill width. And so now it's gonna fill up the available space. So if I make this stack a little bit smaller, it's gonna adapt with it. And you might already be able to guess that this is going to be really great for us when creating these responsive behaviors for our website. So when a user resizes the browser window, all the content will nicely adapt to that width change. On the other hand, absolutely positioned elements can be positioned anywhere within their parent. But it's really important that even though we have a stack here, and these elements are relatively positioned within them, we can still create another frame here and set that to absolute, for example, and then place it anywhere within the stack. So now these two elements here are relatively positioned. They are kind of like the part of the flow, and then the absolutely positioned element is not part of the flow. It really can be positioned anywhere. However, it's really important to mention that even though it's absolutely positioned, we can still get really nice responsive behaviors with it. So as you can see, we have these layout pins when we use absolute positioning, and we also have it when we use fixed positioning, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So we can deactivate and activate these pins right here. If we don't have these pins activated, it will basically mean that this will just be centered, or if we place it a little bit to the left, then it will roughly keep that position. So we usually don't really use this, maybe only if we want to center it like this, and then it's always going to be centered. But what we usually do with these pins is that we activate them. Because for example, if we set 10 here, and we activate this, so as you can see now it's blue, this will basically mean that when we resize the parent, this frame will always try to keep that 10 pixel distance from the left. So as you can see, we have 10 pixels from the left here, and it's gonna always try to keep that distance as we resize the parent. We can also activate the right pin, for example. So now it's gonna keep 10 from left and 10 from right. So as you can see, as I resize, it's nice and responsive, and I can similarly activate all other pins as well, for example to 10, and now it's gonna just fill up the available space and just leave that 10 pixel gap around the edges. So I really wanted to just get these relative and absolute positionings out of the way before we really start digging into creating this site, because it's going to be really important for us. I did not mention everything about them, but we're going to slowly start learning more about them as we're creating this little website. So let's roll up our sleeves and start creating the actual site. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the desktop breakpoint into a stack by pressing the layout button. It's going to have vertical direction, distribute start, and gap 0. And now within the desktop large, we're going to add a frame. So press F on our keyboard, draw a frame, and then we're going to set the width of this frame to fill. And then the height will be maybe 5000 pixels for now. Now, as you can see that we have this 5000 pixel height on this frame, the desktop large is still just 1000 pixels. It's not really adapting to the content within. Since we turned this desktop large into a stack, what we can do is we can set the height to fit content, so it will always fit the content within. So if I set this frame to maybe 2600 pixels, it's gonna nicely adapt. So let's set it back to 5000, but I just realized that we probably don't need that much space, so 2000 is gonna be perfectly fine. So now we have this frame within, we can just rename this to main. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just place all of the sections within this main frame. And this is also going to be a stack. So on the right panel, I'm gonna turn it into a stack, and it's gonna be also vertical direction, start, and gap 0. Because the sections are going to be placed right below each other within this frame. Then I'm going to also remove the fill color because we're not going to need that on this main stack. So now what I can do is I can create my first section within this main stack. So I'm going to just draw another frame here again, and then set the width to fill to make sure that we have that nice responsive behavior. And then the height for now will be maybe 700 pixels, but maybe we're going to change that a little bit later. And then I think I'm going to also remove the fill color on this one. And then I'm going to rename that to hero section. So the frame will be called hero. Cool. So now what we can do is we can also turn this into a stack on the right panel, and then we can start placing elements within this. So as we can see it right here, we have these texts, for example. So what we can do is we can just press T on our keyboard, click into this hero, and just write start with framer. We cannot really see the text because it's black, so I'm going to just select the text and turn it into a white color. And then I think it's 90 pixels, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to double check it, but I'm pretty sure that it's manrope and it's extra bold. So let's just double check these settings. So it's going to be 80. It's going to be a little bit less letter spacing and a little bit less line height. And then we're going to break the framer into a new line. So this is what we have. It's perfect. So now I can just duplicate this text layer and then write the other text. So I'm just copy this from here and then paste it in right here. So this is what we have now. I'm going to probably make this a little bit smaller, 26, and the color is this one right here. So we're going to have a little bit, less contrast on this text layer here. And then probably it's going to be semi-bold. So now we have these two text layers. And as you can see right here, these are probably wrapped within a stack, just to make sure that we are grouping them together. So what we do is we select both of these, and then there's a really cool shortcut for this. It really speeds up our workflow, which is Option Command and Enter. So now as you can see, these two text layers are wrapped within this stack. This can be renamed to title plus sub, just to make sure that we can keep our layers panel clear. Then the direction of the title plus sub will be switched to vertical because we want to make sure that the title and the subtitle are right below each other. Then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that these two text layers are set to fill width, because now these are set to fit width, which basically means that they're fitting the content, which is the text inside of the text layer. But this is not a great responsive behavior for us, because if we go into preview, which we can do with this little play button or with Command and P, you can see that as I resize the viewport to check different devices, it's not really gonna adopt. However, on the other hand, if we set these to width fill, it's gonna nicely adapt, as you can see, and break into multiple lines if needed. So now it is perfect. I think what we're gonna do here is we're gonna adjust the gap between these items. So I'm gonna select the title plus sub and set it to, I don't know, 30 for now. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a button, because as you can see right here, we have a start building button. So I'm gonna press T on my keyboard and write start building. As you can see, I'm placing this start building within the hero section, and we have now the start building and the title plus sub, and these are placed right next to each other. And I want to make sure that these are also right below, so I'm just going to change the direction to vertical. So the start building text will be 16, and then white color, or I think it's black, and the white button. So of course, to make sure that we have that nice color around the button, we can wrap it in a stack. So again, Option Command Enter, now it has the stack around. We can call this button, and then the fill width can be changed to fit content, because it will fit nicely the text within, and then I can add the fill color to it. So now we have this really weird button. But we can make it nicer by making sure that we add some padding on this button stack, and you can see it just starts adding some space around the edges, which is exactly what we need. So I think it's gonna be a, I don't even know how much should I have, maybe 16, and then I click this button to adjust the sides separately or individually. What I can do is I can add a little bit more on the right and on the left. Then I can go to radius and completely round its corners. So now we have this really cool button here. I can make the text a little bit bolder here, and we can now place this within our title plus sub just to see how it looks. So I just press Command and X to cut it, and then Command and V within the title plus sub. I can click the title plus sub and set the alignment to the left, so everything will be nicely aligned to the left. And I think we can decrease the gap to 24. Okay, it looks really great. What I want though is I want to make sure that this subtitle is not bigger than a certain size of pixels. Now we're setting it to width fill, so it will always try to fill up the available space. But I want to set a maximum amount of width that it cannot exceed. So I'm going to press min max and then max width. So I can just add a fixed value here. I can just adjust it like this, maybe write 300. It's a little bit too small, so maybe like this. And then I can see that it can be a little bit bigger line height. So now we have this. I can see that we might need to decrease the padding on the top and on the bottom on this button, but it's really just tweaking these values to get the right design that we need. It's really cool that we're building a live website. It's going to be a real website on the internet, but we can do it on this canvas, which is really similar to Figma, for example. So now that we have the title plus sub, and we can also write plus button here because now we created the button as well, we can make sure that it is a little bit nicer, because now it's just sticking to the left side of the website and it doesn't even have some space over there. So let's fix this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the title plus sub, and I'm going to just add a max width to it, which is going to be 1100 pixels. And now as you can see, it's much nicer. It has this max width, but when I start making the website a little bit smaller, you're going to see that it will still stick to the left side like this. We can prevent this from happening by adjusting the padding within the hero. So if I add left and right padding on the hero section, 2020, this will mean that we will have that padding here on the left and on the right as well. So if we preview, you're going to see that now this will keep that nice padding value on the left and on the right. Great, so as far as I can tell, I think we have this part of the website. I think what we can do now is we can add these fun images. As you can see, these are 3D transformed, and we're going to also add some cool animations to them a little bit later. But for now, let's just get the images. Where are my images? I think they are right here. So I'm just gonna drag and drop them onto the canvas. You can use your maybe, I don't know, like designs. Maybe if this is a portfolio for you, or, you can get creative what images you use here. But we're gonna just use websites that are built in Framer, and we're gonna use these as like little cards that are floating on the right side of the hero section. So first of all, we have to think how we're gonna position these. As you can see, these are positioned really like in a free-form way. So we can probably guess that these are not gonna be relatively positioned elements, because we are really specific about how we are positioning them, and you can see that they are overlapping in a way. So these are going to be absolutely positioned elements, and you will see that this is where we can actually utilize absolute positioning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the first image, which is going to be this one. I'm going to be pressing Command and X and pasting it within the title plus sub plus button frame. And now you can see by default it's positioned up relatively. I can reorder these elements within here, but as I said, I want to position it in a really specific way to the right side. So I'm going to switch it to absolute, and then just use my arrow keys to move it to the right. However, we're going to see a really weird thing, and that is this. It just starts disappearing, starts cutting off, because the parent frame of this image here ends right here. How can we fix this? We can select its parent frame, which is the title plus sub plus button, and we can change the overflow behavior here to visible from hidden. So now the overflowing elements within the stack will be visible, such as this little image. So I'm going to try to get a size that will work well within this hero. Let me just quickly see what we used there. So it's 210. And then we're gonna have some fun with it, because we are going to transform it in 3D space. So the way we can do that is by going to the right panel, because we have all the properties there. And under transforms, we can add a rotate, which is already added. And then I'm gonna also add another property, which is perspective, because what we want to make sure is that when we, for example, 3D transform this element in 3D space like this, we want to make sure that we have some perspective distortion, because now it still looks quite flat. So if we add perspective, now you see that it really comes out. So yeah, it looks much better. So I'm just going to tweak these properties here, the Z, X, and Y axis, and just rotate in 3D space like that. So I think it's going to be positioned like this. And then I'm going to again use my arrow keys to position it exactly. I think it's going to be around here. And then I'm going to just use the next image and then place it within the title plus sub again. Set it to absolute positioning, and I'm going to just repeat these steps. However, what I noticed is that these need to be a little bit rounded in terms of the corner. So I'm going to select both of these images and set 20 radius on them. So now basically I'm just going to go through all of these images. I'm probably going to speed up this part of the video and, tweak their position and the 3D transforms on them. Okay, so now we have roughly the positions that we want, and there is one little issue. First of all, when we select the hero, you can see that it ends right here, and since this is overflowing, it cuts off, and so we have to set the same overflow visible behavior on this hero section. So now it's gonna nicely overflow. Okay, so that is perfect. Now the way we can really nicely improve the look of these cars is by adding some depth with just some drop shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of them and then go to the right panel and I'm going to find shadow. So here I can set the X and Y properties, add some blur, and then increase the opacity of the shadow. So now as you can see, it looks much better. We have a little bit more depth to these cards. Now what I can do is I can maybe like just take a look at what it looks like when we resize this in preview. You can see that as I start getting a little bit smaller with the viewport, some of these cards are moving to the right, to the left, so these are not really consistent. The reason for this is because, as you can see, if I select them and take a look at the pins for each one, you can see that some of them have pins activated, some of them have the right pin, the top pin, so it's just all over the place. So the way we can make this responsive is just we have to make sure that the pins are consistent. So let's say we want to activate only the right pin on each of them. So I'm going to select all of them and then deactivate all of the pins by clicking twice to the center. Now it's deactivated on each of them. And then if we then activate the pin on the left, now only the left pin will be activated on each of them. So if I nicely resize, as you can see, all of them will be, pushed away in a consistent way. Now what I can do is I think, add the next section, and then we're gonna end the video probably with the navigation, or we're just gonna add the navigation after the next section. So this is gonna be, another frame, just like this hero. So now we have the main, within that we have the hero section, and then we're gonna create another one below that, which is going to be a features section. And then we're going to set the width to fill, then the height to, let's say, 1000 pixels for now. And then it's going to be a layout as well with vertical positioning or direction, sorry. And then the gap will be a little bit bigger, maybe 24. If I go to the right panel here, I can set the linear gradient fill. So now it's just a solid fill. As you can see, I can change it to solid color, but I can also switch it to a gradient. And then I can paste in the color that I used on the other one. And now I have the same color, which is perfect. Now I just want to make sure that, as you can see, this first section ends a little bit faster here. We have a little bit more space here on the bottom. So I'm going to just make it smaller. But now, as you can see, as I'm making this smaller, all of the content is getting pushed to the top, the text as well. So what I can do, instead of having distribute center, I can have distribute start on the hero. So everything is pushed to the top. Then I can add some top padding to push them back down. So maybe 150 or 70. And then now if I change the size, the height of the section, it's no longer going to push the text to the top. Okay, so this is what we have now. Pretty good. So what we can do now is we can add some content within this features section. But since we already created a bunch of the stuff that we need, we can just reuse the title plus sub plus button and just paste it within the features. So Command and C and Command and V. And then we can just remove the images. We don't need those. We also don't need the button and the text layer. We just need the title. Now we have pasted in the text. I can also make this a little bit smaller, maybe 46, but I'm going to check what we had here, 48. So the text size will be 48 pixels. And then I think I'm going to add max width to this text layer as well. So it's going to be like this. Now what I'm going to do with this features section is I'm going to also have distribute on start, and then I'm going to push it down with top padding. I am thinking about having a little bit closer to the little image right there, so maybe 180. And then within the title plus sub, which I can rename by the way here, so maybe it's going to be content. So within this now I can create another frame which will house all of these cards. So if I create a frame here, then I can press Command and X. Now it's on my clipboard and I can just paste it within any frame. So I can select the content and then Command and V. I'm going to set it to width fill and maybe 420 height. The fill color will be removed because we don't need that usually. And then the layout will be activated, so we have that nice responsive behavior for the elements within the stack. The gap will be a little bit bigger between these two, so the text and this stack right here. And this will be called cards because we will have the cards within that. So first of all, I think I'm just gonna start making the card right here on the canvas and then paste it within the section. So it's gonna be 420 for the height, and then let's just have 340 width for now. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that we have 20 pixel rounded corners. We're gonna turn it into a stack, so layout is activated. And then we're gonna call this card. The color will be, I'm just gonna get this color from here. So it's a really dark black color. And as you can see, the structure of this is that we have a frame with an image on the top and then some text on the bottom. So first of all, image. To make sure that it's on the top, we can use distribute set to start. So it starts at the top. We can set width fill, and then I'm not sure what height we have here. It's also set to height fill. So it fills up the available space. Now if I set the height to fill, it will just fill up the complete card. But if we have some additional elements here, so for example a text, so publish, let's make it white, it's publish, let's rewrite it publish. And now as you can see, when we set the height to fill for the image, it's no longer going to take up the entire card because we have this text as well right here. So let's see what we used here, 24 pixels. And then I'm going to also have another text layer, which is going to have some new text here. So let's paste it in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set both of these text layers to width fill. And then of course, the second one will be a little bit smaller, so 16. And then I'm going to also use a different color. So I'm going to just grab it from here, paste it in within our design. But I'm not sure if we actually used the right, yes. We have the correct color, however the opacity is dropped here. So on the right panel, we can also just drop its opacity. And then we can wrap these two in a stack, so Option Command Enter. And then we can set some padding. And now you can see that we have some nice breathing room around the edges. Cool, so now I'm gonna select the card. I'm gonna set gap to 0, so between the image and the text stack, we're not going to have any space. Let's rename this to title plus sub, and then this to image. I'm going to grab my image, so let's set the fill color to an image, and then I'm just going to drop my image here. These are just screenshots from the Framer website. And now we're going to set some border color on this card, so I'm just going to have this transparent gray. And now I can just comment an X here and then paste it within the cards stack. Here I'll be able to set the width to fill. So as you can see, it looks really weird. This is probably because the image is also filling up the available space and it's cropping the content. To prevent this from happening, what we can do is we can set this lock here on the image. So it will always try to keep this aspect ratio that we see right now at the time of locking the aspect ratio. So now if I set the card to width fill, the image is, as you can see, trying to keep that aspect ratio. We cannot see the full thing because it is set to a fixed height, but if we set it to fit content, it will nicely fit the content. But we also have to set the cards to fit content then. So now we should be able to see the full thing, but we still cannot see it because the features section is not big enough to display the whole thing. Of course, this is not how it's going to look like because we're going to have more cards right next to each other. So we can just duplicate this 2 times and then we have these nice cards right next to each other. However, there's a small thing that we're going to do here. We're going to learn a new concept inside the Framer, which is called components. When it comes to these reusable elements that we reuse multiple times. So when it comes to like buttons or cards, we usually want to turn them into components. The reason for this is because, for example, I decide I want to change the color of this card. I have to do it on each of the cards that I use here, which is not really great. I want to be able to just have a main component, change the styling of the component inside of the main component, and then all of the instances will be, changing automatically. So the way I can create a component is by just right-clicking on the card and create component. So now we have this really simple component here, and we can just duplicate this. So I'm going to delete these and duplicate this twice. However, now the problem is that how do we actually change the text and the content images within these cards? Because if we double click, we see the component editor, but if we change it here, it's changed everywhere. So how can we get certain properties that we can change independently for different instances of the component? We can do really easily. We can just go inside of the component editor and then identify those certain properties that we want to change independently. For example, in our case, one will be for the image. So we select the image, and on the right panel we have the image property, and next to that we have the little plus button that we can click to create an image variable. This will be a component variable that will show up on the right panel when we click the component on the canvas, and we can change the image right here. So let's just create some other variables for the title, for example, and for the subtitle. Now if we go back, we'll be able to just paste in the content from these cards. So it's going to be design for the first one. We're going to have this text here. Just select the subtitle and change the text. Then we have publish here. And the last one is the scale. We have the last one as well. And now we can just change the images too. So grab the publish image and grab the scale image too. Everything is set up perfectly. So now what I can do is I can just increase the spacing between these cards by selecting their parent, which is the cards stack, and adjusting the gap. Maybe we want to have 24 between these, or just 16, I'm not sure. Let's just have 16 for now. We can add some button padding on the features section, so maybe 100 on the bottom. As you can see, it's added right here. And then we can set the main stack to fit content, so it fits the content within. So now we have this little website, and it looks really nice, looks really great. We can visit it on a desktop breakpoint. It looks really nice here. However, if we resize this, we will start seeing some issues. First of all, we have not set the padding on the left for the features section. So let's do that on the left and on the right. So features, and then 20, 20 for the left and for the right. So now if we resize, we will have that nice gap right there. And at this point, I can add the last touch before optimizing this for mobile, and that is going to be the navigation. So that will be a really simple frame that I will just draw right here. It's going to be 65 for the height, and then let me just grab the color that we used here. It's black with 85% transparency. Then I also apply 100 corner radius, so the corners are fully rounded. Then we can get our logo SVG, just drag and drop it to the canvas, and then place it within the frame. Now it's absolutely positioned within because this frame is not turned into a stack, but we're gonna do it really soon. But before that, I'm gonna also grab this button that we already designed and just paste it within this frame. As you can see, as I pasted this button within the frame, it's placed right here. and I cannot really grab it because then I will move it outside of the frame. So what I usually do in this case is that I press Option H, this will center it horizontally, and then Option V, it will center it vertically within the frame. I will place it to the right, but before that I will just turn this frame into a stack. So layout, let's name it navigation, and then we're gonna have a really specific type of distribute, which is space between. This basically means that the element on the left, the first element will be on the left and the last element will be on the right when we have direction horizontal. And so now I can just set a little bit of padding. So we will have top padding 8, right padding 8, and bottom padding 8. And then on the left, we're going to have a little bit more. And for the button, we're going to make sure that the height is fill. And then I'm going to make the fill color a little bit more transparent here. So maybe 20 or 15. And then a white color for the text. And then here, the logo will be wrapped in a stack. So Option Command Enter. As you can see, now it's set to width fill automatically. I have Shift A as a shortcut, which makes the width and height fit content. And then I can just add a little bit of padding around, maybe 8. And now we have this little frame around our logo. And it's really useful because then I can add a link to this frame, which will maybe take us to the home page. Now I will just tweak the left padding just to make sure that it looks equal. And then I can paste this within the desktop. So it's really important that it's not going to be within the main, it's going to be within the desktop large, and then I'm going to move it here to the top. Now as you can see, it's relatively positioned because I can reorder this with the arrow keys. But it's not great for us because it's going to scroll away, and I want to make sure that it's, absolutely positioned, or not absolutely positioned. I'm really sorry, I'm a little bit tired. So, so it's not absolutely positioned, it's fixed. I want to make sure that it's fixed on the page. So let's just use fixed. It's really important, by the way, that if you have this nested within the main, for example, you cannot use fixed. As you can see, it's not available. So let's just place it here, and then we're going to have the fixed available. With fixed positioning, we have the same layout pins, so we can have 24 pixels from the top, and then we can, maybe I should set 24 from the right and from the left as well, so it's going to take up the full width of the site. It will nicely, respond to different changes. But I can see, by the way, that I cannot really see the button when we scroll down, so this color for the button will not really work. Yeah, I know what I did wrong. I basically did not add the background blur on the navigation, because as you can see, the black is transparent, but we can see through it completely, and the layers below are not blurred. So if we go to styles in the navigation, we can add filters, BG blur, set it to 8, and then it's going to be much nicer, but we still have some issues. So let's make sure that this is set to z-index 10, so it's above everything else. And now you can see that since now this navigation is above everything else, it's now nicely blurring all of the layers that are below the navigation. Cool. So let's just also, I just remembered that we did not add a hover state, for example, to the button, and we did not add the link to it. So we can turn this into a component to add some interactions to it. So Option Command K, that's the shortcut for creating components. And this is the default variant, and I can add a hover state. So I just clicked this button below the variant, and the hover state can be something really simple. So maybe I want to just drop the opacity to 0.5. Now, as you can see, if I hover over, it's going to nicely have the hover state. I can also add the link here, but I can turn this into a variable so we can control the link from the canvas. So here I can add the link. I'm not going to link anywhere now, but just so you know, this is how you do it. And then we could also turn this button into a component. But what we can also do is we can create a new variant, which is called navigation. So this is used within the navigation, and we just change the styling of the button for the navigation variant. So I think this is what we had. And so now we can just replace that frame with this component. So I'm going to Command and C this button, and then select this button right here and Shift, Command and V. This will replace it with what I had on my clipboard. Let's make sure that it's set to fill height, because that's what we had. And then the variant will be navigation. And so now we have the same thing. Pretty good. Before we start optimizing this, because it doesn't really look great on phone or tablet, what we can do is we can add some fancy animations. So the easiest way to add animations to our website on Framer is by adding these appear effects. So they happen when we load the website. So for example, what I can do is I can make sure that when I load the site, first maybe the text and the button on the left comes in, and then one by one in a staggered way, these cards also animate in. So let's try to do that. So if I select, for example, this text layer here and go to the right panel, effects, and I can add appear, but for the text, I think I'm going to use the text effect because it just looks better in my opinion on text. So as you can see now, we just have a default setting, and you can see it looks like this. It is pretty cool. Like it's crazy that with one click we could create something like this in Framer. So I think I'm not even gonna change it, because this default setting is just perfect. Okay, so this is the first title. Then on the second one, we're gonna have an appear effect. So appear, we can specify the enter effect. So the opacity will be dropped to 0. This is where it's coming in from. But I'm gonna increase it a little bit so we can see the other changes that we do. So I want it to come in from the bottom. So I'm gonna offset it on the Y by 20 pixels. And then on the transition setting, I can set a little bit slower transition, maybe 0.7. And then the bounce will be 0. And we're gonna have a little delay, so maybe 0.1 or 0.15. So it comes in a little bit later. So first we have the title, then the subtitle. So let's take a look at this. Let's just set the opacity back to 0. So now as you can see, we have the start with Framer, and then this subtitle comes in. But what I'm thinking now is that maybe we can wait until the full title comes in, and then we animate in the subtitle. So I think we wait around maybe 1 second before animating in. So let's delay it by 1 second. Yeah, it looks really nice. Maybe a little bit less. As you can see, you're just playing around with these values, and it's crazy that you don't have to write code. You just adjust these properties on the canvas. We can now copy this effect, this appear effect, and paste it on the button. I can add an appear effect here and then just paste it right there. And then I can just change the transition here, because now we have the same effect that we have on the subtitle. I just want to tweak the delay so it comes in a little bit later. Okay, I think that delay was a little bit too much, so let's not wait that much. Yeah, it looks great. You might run into the issue where you clip your elements while animating them in, so make sure that they're parent. So in this case, the title plus sub plus button is set to overflow visible. In our case, it's set to overflow visible because we set it because of these images that we place right here. But by default, you're going to have them on hidden. So make sure that you set them to visible. So when this button is animating in from this bottom, it's not going to clip. Okay, so let's go into these cards, apply effect, appear. And what effect I want to have here, maybe just a scale down. So it comes in from scale down size, and then it's a little bit hard here, because what happens now is that by default we have rotation set to 0 on this card. So by default, it's going to come in from this zeroed out rotation, but we have some rotation applied to the actual card. So it's going to animate in from no rotation to some rotation that we had. So let's just take a look at how that looks. Set it to a little bit slower pace, and then the delay will be 0.5 seconds. Let's take a look at this. Okay, actually it looks really nice. I like how it animates in, how it changes its 3D rotation. It looks really good. Okay, so maybe we wait a little bit less, maybe 0.12. Yeah. And then I'm just gonna copy this effect. So I'm pressing Command and K, then copy effect while this is selected, this frame. And then I'm gonna paste it on the next one, Command K, paste effect. And then I'm just gonna tweak the delay here. 0.3. Then on this one, 0.5. 0.4, sorry. And then on the last one, we're gonna 0.5. So now this is what we have. Looks pretty cool. Okay, so I think the next thing that we can do is we can also animate in the next section, so the feature. Let's just get the effect from the subtitle, copy effect, paste effect here, and then adjust it to 0.6. Okay, and then for the cards as well, it's gonna be 0.7 for the delay, so it comes in last. Pretty good. Nice. Looks lovely. You know, you could tweak these values forever for your website. Maybe you want to have them a little bit faster. But yeah, this is how easy it is to add these effects. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the different breakpoints that we already have set up right here and just see what looks off and what doesn't look off. So on the desktop medium, everything looks great. On the tablet, we might be able to just pull these images a little bit to the left. So I'm going to select all of them and just press the left arrow key to move them. Maybe I'm also resizing them, so let's just make them a bit smaller and just move them further to the left. Maybe reposition them as well. And these changes will only be applied on the tablet breakpoint. So if we take a look at the phone, for example, which is on the left of its breakpoint, you're going to see that these changes are not applied here. We have to make sure that these changes are also applied, not applied, but also made on the phone separately. One thing that I want to note here is that by default, if I move this first image on the primary breakpoint, it is moving on the desktop MD and the phone as well. However, it's no longer moving on the tablet. It's because we have overridden the position property. So it's really important when you're optimizing the design, when you're changing maybe the text content, maybe the layout settings on different smaller breakpoints, you're overriding that property and it's no longer going to follow what you set and what you change on the primary. So keep this in mind. If you change your mind and you no longer want to have that override on the element, you can select it and then just have a right click on it and then reset overrides. So now as you can see, if I change the position on the desktop large, it's going to change on tablet as well. Let's just revert back to what we had because it actually looked really good, but I made a bunch of movements. Okay, so it looks great like this. And then maybe what we can do for the cards is we can place them right below each other. It's really easy because we have used stacks, which allows us to just change the direction, and now it's placed right below each other. However, there's a small issue, and that's the fact that I think these are too wide right now. So what we can do is we can select all of these cards on the primary breakpoint, and we can add a max width to them. So maybe 400 pixels. So as you can see right here, they're not going to be larger than 400 pixels. We can adjust this. Maybe we can have them a little bit larger, maybe 460. But yeah, it's going to be much nicer because it doesn't take up the full size of the viewport, but they nicely can just, have that 460 pixel max width. Great. So now let's go onto the phone. Now, as you can see, we don't really have to adjust the navigation because it just has a button. But when you have a bunch of menu items, you will need to optimize that component for mobile as well, because what you usually do is you turn the navigation to component as well. I'm not going to have time for that in this video, but if you really are dedicated, you can just watch another one of my videos, which is dedicated to teaching you exactly that, how you can make responsive navigation bars. So I'm going to leave that video in the description. But now you can see that these text sizes are getting a bit large on the phone. And what we could do is we could just select the size here and just resize it, but there's a much easier way to do this. And that is done right here. So on the primary breakpoint, we add a style to this text. So if I click style, new style, it's going to be a heading 1 because it's a H1. And then here I can add breakpoints to this style. So add breakpoints, and it's going to automatically generate the desktop large, desktop medium, and then the tablet and phone. I usually remove the last one, so we only have desktop. I set to 1200 min width for that. And on tablet, we're going to have 810. So these are the breakpoint sizes that we need. So as you can see now, when we look at tablet, for example, it has this size that we set right here. So it's 64, perfect. And on phone, it is 51, but we can make it even smaller. So maybe 46. And it's really great because now we can set this style to any text layer and it will have the same responsive behavior. And we just have to adjust the text style on the assets if we want to change something about it, maybe the font or size, and it will get applied to all text layers that use that style. I will create one text style for the subtitle too. So style, new, it's going to be just a simple paragraph, and I will add breakpoints here as well. Remove the last one, and then just tweak these min width values just to make sure that these are applied to desktop, tablet, and phone. And here we're gonna have maybe 20 on tablet, and then on phone we're gonna have 16. Really nice. Here I might change the max width to a little bit smaller size. And yeah, it's gonna work really well. And for this, we're gonna have an H2 style. So new style, H2, heading 2. And then do the same thing, breakpoints, remove the last one, adjust these values here, and then have a little bit smaller size on tablet, maybe 40. And then on phone, we're gonna have 32. Okay, great. So now the last thing that we have to make sure that is optimized is the hero section. And of course these cards, but that's really simple. We just have to switch the direction and it's all good. And as you can see, since we have a responsive behavior on this text, so for example, the height is set to fit content, it's nicely adapting to the changed width because of the cards being placed right below each other. Okay, so I don't actually know how we should optimize this for mobile because we have a bunch of images, so I don't know how we can fit them into the view, but maybe we can make this a little bit larger like this. And then maybe I can make this text a little bit smaller. And then what if we bring these in from the right to the left and just make them a little bit smaller. Make them a bit smaller and then reposition them. So move this to the top. Yeah, I think it's gonna be good like this. Okay, so I think this is it. We have it. Maybe the navigation can have 20 pins on the sides for the phone because we don't want to keep that big of a distance here. And yeah, as you can see, now it looks great on phone too. It has the same effects. And yeah, it will look nice. However, you can see that because we have that left pin activated, on smaller sizes it might look a little bit off because it has you know, a bunch of space here. What we can do to prevent this is that, I'm just thinking what would be the best thing to do. Maybe on these smaller breakpoints, we can deactivate the pins. I'm gonna try that. I'm not sure if that's actually gonna be good for us, but you know, many times you just have to experiment in Framer. So let's just see what happens if we remove the pin. Yeah, I think it's better removing the pins here because they're gonna, you know, move a little bit, but it's just gonna be better. Except here, what is happening here on phone? It's still removed here, but yeah, on phone it's a little bit weird. So on tablet, it works really well here, but on phone, these spaces are getting a bit inconsistent. So what we can maybe do is we can make sure that on phone, this left pin is activated. And then on the other hand, what we can do is we can set the max width to a different value on phone, so maybe 400. So when we enter the phone breakpoint, right here, the max width of these elements here will change to 400. As you can see like this. So, you know, this is something that you can do, but it really depends on what you do on the rest of your site. So it's really important to keep these consistent. So what for example, on Framer.University, I always change the max width values on different breakpoints. So yeah, exactly this is what I do on my website, but then I would probably have to do it on this section. So let's do it here as well. Let's switch it to 400. So just, you know, switch it at the same time and it looks nice and consistent. So yeah, we basically created this website now. It's ready. It has all of these animations. It's responsive. And what we can do is we can just press the publish button in the top right corner and you will see that now it's published on this domain. And we can click it and we can open it in our browser. And it is just going to work. So yeah, we can send it to our friends and we can also set a custom domain. Or if we don't own a domain, we can just add a Framer subdomain. We can just get a free one right here. Maybe tutorial project.framer.website, or you can, you know, try one of these subdomains. And then you're going to have your own subdomain, tutorial project.framer.website. And you have your site right here. Pretty cool. And it's responsive, it's animated, it's performant, it's pretty cool, I guess. So yeah, that's it for this video. Make sure to leave your feedback in the comments. So if something wasn't clear in the video, just write a comment and I will do my best to answer you. And yeah, I think that's all. Just make sure to go to Framer.University because I have a bunch of other like resources, components, and remixes and like lessons, tutorials that you can use to learn Framer. And yeah, make sure to like this video if you liked it and subscribe for more. And I'm gonna see you in the next one.